Bellerin.
All right, everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Saved by the Bellerin, the Arsenal Football Club podcast here on the Sports Talk Line Network. Joining you from the United States, I'm Raphael, and across my video dial to my right, joining us all from London this evening, we're starting with Sam. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, mate. Hope you're well.
I am well, thank you. And next to Sam is Ryan. Welcome back, Ryan.
Hello, mate. Thank you for having me again.
Always a pleasure. And rounding out the UK contingent is Dean. Welcome, Dean.
Hi, mate. Thank you very much. Great to be here as always.
All right. It's only been 3 days since our last podcast, and quite a lot of Arsenal news, quite a lot of good Arsenal news. Some of it just occurring hours before we hit the air. Let's start with the freshest bit of news. Announced by the team this afternoon that Gabriel Martinelli, the team's young Brazilian winger, has agreed to a 4-year contract extension, I believe, with an option for a fifth. Dean, I'm going to start with you on this. This one, we've been talking about, Bukayo Saka's extension, which was actually announced right after our last pod. We were talking about it then. There's been a lot of chatter about Aubameyang's possible extension. We'll get to that in a moment. But I don't think anybody saw this one coming, did they?
No, as you say, obviously, with everything we've been saying last week and leading up to even the pod on Tuesday with Saka, and even Sam mentioned that it was close, and obviously the day after it, boom, got announced. And then today we're all just sort of sitting there, we're chatting, and we're obviously discussing coming on air for the pod and that. And suddenly, Ryan showed us where it popped up on Arsenal's feed that Martinelli had signed an extension. And I think, as you say, it kind of came out of the blue. Even the people that are usually closest to the club, certain journalists and such, no one mentioned this as being a possible happening anytime soon. He's only been with us a season now. Definitely shown his worth, definitely shown his mettle for staying in the first team, not so much playing at Boldy's youth and what have you. But no, it's a great bit of positive roundup news. I mean, we've had the win, we've had Saka, now Martinelli, and as you say, as you'll discuss in a bit, Aubameyang. But no, I for one am very excited. I'm very pleased. I was very hyped when I read that. Just a great bit of news all round.
All right, and I'm going to jump in here as somebody who's had knee surgery, has gone through the process, and knows a little bit about. I've covered injuries of all sorts for a long time in my writings of the NFL and a little bit about the Prem, and know a lot about knee injuries. And what concerned me most when we heard the news a couple of weeks ago that Martinelli was having a knee scope, he was having cartilage repaired in his, I believe it's his left knee. That always concerns me when I see that with a young player, especially one that relies on speed as he does, because cartilage is not something that regenerates. It's something when they repair your knee, there's a tear. Sometimes there might be loose cartilage floating around. They want to clean it out. They want to smooth it out. But it's not something that regrows on its own. I mean, there's some experiments on that. And so my long-term concern was that, if you have too many of these and you lose enough cartilage in a knee, you reach a point where you have bone grinding on bone, and that starts you kind of cascade down and you head towards an arthritic condition. And if you have enough of these processes, it can shorten a career. So with a player who's not even 20 years old, I was concerned about this. Now, what this news tells me, we were talking about this, we were sharing photos that Gabby was sharing on his Instagram account of his leg in a brace only like 2 days ago. So for him to come out with a long-term extension, 4 years, only 2 days after he's showing photos of his rehab, tells me that the club is not concerned about this. So as an Arsenal fan, that makes me feel really, really good. So but let's move on to other possible really positive news for Sam and Ryan. Also on a lot of chatter on the internet today that Pierre Aubameyang has put forward his his proposal to the team, what he's looking for. And the terms were apparently 3 years, around £250,000 per week in salary. Sam, I'm going to start with you. Does the club really need to quibble? Do they need to push strong counter offer? Do they really need to dicker with this man over a new contract if these are his terms?
No, I'm going to go with no. As I said on Twitter today, put a contract in front of Aubameyang, let him fill out whatever the figure it is, and let him sign it. Blank contract, because people can have concerns about his age and whether he's going to slow down, but it's not so much the slowing down of the body, it's the sharpness of his mind. And with the amount of pace that he's got already, if he slows down a little bit, it wouldn't matter. It will still be pacier than the majority of fullbacks or centre-backs wherever he's playing. So at the end of the day, you just need to put the paper in front of him, let him sign it, move on. 3 years. I'm not being funny. That's a good length. If we was to do 2 years, we're back in the same situation potentially next year. So yeah, at the end of the day, Aubameyang needs to stay, and he's the crown jewel of this team. It's as simple as that. Like, he's been the quickest to get to 50 goals. He's the captain, and he's our most lethal striker. Well, winger or striker, depending on what way you're looking at it. So, yeah, Aubameyang needs to stay. As I've said on Twitter as well, I think that it's potentially going to be announced next week.
All right, Ryan, going to you. Let's put the dollars. Let's add, or the pounds in this case. In my American side showing here, can put in the money he's going to be paid in, which is in pounds. 3 years at that salary, we're talking about 40 million pounds, roughly 40 million pounds over 3 years. Let's say they let him go. Let's say they tried to move him. Is there another striker on the market who Arsenal could get for that amount, for 40 million pounds? Is there anybody available who could replace his production?
In a word, no. You just can't. You don't replace a Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang with just 40 million. As ridiculous as that sounds, but 40 million will get you someone like Jovic from Real Madrid, who's not going to score a ratio of 1 every 2 games. It's just not going to happen. And I think 40 million over 3 years, 250 grand a week, it's just a simple thing, really. And just give it to him. You gave Ozil a 350 grand a week contract. Do the same with Aubameyang. We've lost Mickey's wages off the book. Aubameyang just needs to stay. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, he's worth more than 40 million to us. Because if he gets us 1 season in the Champions League, we get that all back. Literally 40 million back from just finishing the Champions League. And you don't replace his output with one striker. I mentioned it before, you're going to need another winger who scores goals. You're going to need an attacking midfielder who scores goals. We have to replace his output all over the pitch. And you don't do that with 40 million. So it just makes sense to give him what he wants.
All right, Dean, another way of looking at this. Pierre Aubameyang is 31 years old. Okay. So obviously, if you're giving a contract extension to a player of that age, no matter how good he is, there's always going to be concern that, just the natural arc of a career, that he's about to enter his declining phase. But given how rapidly he's reached 50 goals, he just scored his 50th goal for the club this past match. We'll talk about that in a moment, against Norwich City, and his 51st. Even if he declines, if you look at his time with Arsenal, his last 2 seasons and this partial season with COVID, you're still looking at another potential 50 goals, aren't you? Even if he's declining.
Look, yeah, I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon physically. But as Sam was saying, he's so pacey. If he slowed down a little bit right now, if he sort of shelved it slightly, he'd be like your average top striker anyway. I can definitely see him doubling up if he stays with us and doing what he did. You don't often see strikers going into their 30s much. Early 30s perhaps, but not deep down. Like I made this point a few times. But look at Dennis Bergkamp, retired with us in his late 30s, 37 I believe it was. And although he wasn't as not efficient, but though he wasn't as practical in his later thing, he was still doing the business. I could definitely see Aubameyang doing that. As Ryan pointed out, you're not going to get one player for that price doing that. Even now, at his age now, if you said to a club, give us a minimum of 45 million for Aubameyang, I think they'd do it in a heartbeat. He is still thoroughly wanted, and I think clubs would do it. To give him the equivalent of 40 million to get another 3 years out of him, I think would be stupid not to. I can't see him physically faltering over those 3 years, and I could definitely still see him being the pinpoint striker that he is. And as Sam was saying as well, and as Ryan was saying as well, for a player like him getting us into UCL, and doing that. But the thing is as well, and we'll talk about it later, I know we will, within the sort of demographic of transfers, we need to start building for him now. We need to start building. It does look like, everything's pointing towards it being he'll stay. I mean, we've been saying that it's just a matter of time, for weeks on end now. But with that has to come the build. We're keeping Saka long term. We're keeping Martinelli long term. We have to now look at reinforcing the side for him and with him in mind. But yeah, I can't see him. I can't see him faltering physically or mentally anytime soon. We'd be stupid not to take this.
All right. So good news off the pitch. Good news at building the squad, as Dean said, expanding, not subtracting, but keeping your key assets and building around them. But Arsenal had a match on the pitch in the interim since our last pod. And it was a massive thrashing of Norwich City. The best result since the club has come back from the COVID break. I'm going to start with Ryan because he predicted the scoreline exactly on the last pod. He said Arsenal was going to mesh and they were going to thrash Norwich by a 4-0 scoreline. Lo and behold, they won the match 4-0. Ryan, take a bow.
Thank you. Yeah, it all seemed to come together. The midfield played great. Ceballos actually looked really, really sharp. He looked really good, actually. Some of his through passes to Bellerin to get him in on the right side was particularly good. Tierney on the left as well, incredible work rate and desire just to get up and down the pitch impressed me quite a lot. And then Xhaka as well, just the way he controls the tempo of the game just impresses me every single game. And I did a video on him, the way he just moves around in certain positions and he just seems so comfortable on the ball every time he receives it. And the defence seemed all right. Like we had a few shaky moments, but overall it was a pretty comfortable win. And my man Cedric scored as well. So it was 3 minutes into his debut. So it was all good news for us, really.
Well, good news for your videos, especially. Sam, we've talked about mesh. We've talked on the last pod of how the challenge for Mikel Arteta is really kind of finding a fit in the middle of the park. There were times in that match, and it was against Norwich City. We have to qualify that a little bit. But do we really need to go overboard in qualifying it? It really seemed like they found a rhythm and a pace, and they started to play Arsenal football the way Mikel Arteta wants it.
Yeah, as you say, you can only beat what's in front of you. But in regards to the midfield, it really did find a rhythm in terms of finding the channels, moving across the pitch. The team balance did look asymmetrical, whichever way they went down. It looked like we was always going to create a chance when we was attacking them. So in terms of the midfield, I've got to give special praise to them because they performed really, really, really well. I'd also reserve some praise for Kieran Tierney as well. And Hector Bellerin, I know he gets a lot of stick, but he did play a really solid game going backwards and forwards. And also Cedric, when he come on, like as Ryan pointed out in his videos with Cedric, he's just an absolute solid defender. And even going forward, he's very smart in what he does. So yeah, at the end of the day, if that's how good a midfield can play without Mikel Arteta making any signings, just imagine the midfield how that midfield can play when he's got his own men on the pitch.
All right. And we look for little things, as the club tries to round back into form. Dean, something we haven't commented upon very much, but I'll let you kind of pick at this. Arsenal been off and on, hot and cold, and this precedes Mikel Arteta with pressing. It seems like they talk a good game. They want to be a pressing team, and maybe they'll try it for a few minutes in a match. And it seems they back off, or it's not. They don't do it as a unit. Some players do it, some don't. It gets them into trouble. We're starting to see real production from that in the last few matches. We've seen Eddie Nketiah, steal a ball off a keeper a couple matches ago and score a goal, and we saw it again here with Pierre Aubameyang. Is this just further evidence that Arteta's vision is really starting? We're starting to see buy-in.
Something's definitely happened, hasn't it, in terms of Arteta's coaching style, in terms of what he's looking for. I mean, the progression was always going to come. But, I mean, we've never been, in very recent times, as, I guess, aggressive off the ball in terms of press. And I think it was something Ryan pointed out in one of his videos as well recently about it was on how to beat City, I believe. And obviously that wasn't followed through with the press. And it wasn't followed through anywhere near as much as probably should have been. But it's definitely something we're seeing. We're hijacking balls. We're putting more pressure on teams. I've noticed in the past couple of games, off the ball, obviously our formation's becoming more hostile in terms of, how would I put it, sort of frightening a team, if you know what I mean. It's hard to explain, but I know where I'm going with it. It's more of a sort of, more of a wall, a rush. So it's like pressure off the ball, pushing forward, rather than backing off and giving them space, which I've seen in a lot of Emery's side. And when Arteta first sort of started taking over. So it just seems like we're getting more hostile, more aggressive off the ball, and a lot more cohesive on the ball as well. Like there was a lot of possession football more than I'd seen recently against Norwich. And it was pointed out, I mean, I think Ryan would argue, but it was pointed out in the group after the game. It was probably one of our better games. Probably not the best, but one of our better games with Mikel as manager. So, yeah, I mean, there is definitely a difference. And it's a bit obvious. One of the lads said something the other day about a couple of weeks ago about if you watch a game back, I think when Freddie was in charge compared to when Arteta took over, you could see a massive difference there now as well. So it's definitely being coached out of them, whatever Emery put in there. But as Sam said, think about what's going to happen when Arteta's got his own men in and he's doing that kind of coaching there as well with his own boys.
All right. Arteta with his own men. Perfect segue into the next topic. Let's scan the transfer landscape, and some new names. Let's try this different. I'm going to put a rumor in front of you. I want you to rate its reliability. All right, because we've got three that we want to discuss specifically. And let's start with the oldest, the moldiest, the most exciting, depending on how you want to look at it. The Thomas Partey rumor. In the last few days, there's been a lot of chatter that Atletico are offering him to other clubs, especially in Italy. Is that smoke? Is there anything to that? We've been saying on the pod for quite some time that it looks like Thomas Partey to Arsenal is one of the worst kept secrets that there is out there. So is this just agent chatter? Is this boredom from other sites? Or is there really something to it? Is Thomas Partey being offered to clubs like Napoli? Start with you, Sam.
This, I done a tongue-in-cheek tweet about today. When the reports come out saying Thomas Partey is being offered for, I think it was Milik of Napoli, I quote tweeted that and saying that is happening. The reason I say that is whenever Napoli get involved in an Arsenal transfer rumour, we can pinpoint this back to Leno, Torreira and Pepe. Look where they all are. So knowing that, and also just knowing the timeline of what's happening and the scenario of how the media's catching up, this transfer, I believe, is definitely happening. So I would have to rate this one a 10.
Quickly, where would you put this on the scale, on the Sam scale of 0 to 10?
Raph, you cut out there. Were you talking to me or Ryan?
Ryan, let me rephrase the question. Ryan, let's use the Sam scale on a 0 or 1 to 10. How favorable is this Partey rumor?
I'm not as confident as Sam is at the moment. I'm going to go with an 8 because the timeline is definitely favourable in our direction. I don't think Napoli are involved at all. I think that's all paper filling from sources that just want to annoy Arsenal fans, if I'm being honest. And then because Milik, who is reportedly being offered as a make-weight, has already agreed terms with Juventus. So I think Thomas Partey has pretty much said from what we know and what we've read, Thomas Partey has wanted to join Arsenal for the last 2 years. And he's not going to say, oh, I don't want to go there now. I want to go to Napoli. I mean, it doesn't happen these days, does it? We're Arsenal. We can offer triple wages what he's earning now. Napoli can't compete with us. I'm as confident as an 8.
Okay, Dean, similar, but I'm going to say this. So we had been talking about this offline, that a lot of times with these rumors, especially when they hang around, Arsenal's not going to rush out in the middle of the season where there's still games to be played and say, Thomas Partey is definitely coming. In fact, if you look across the internet, very, very few teams are firmly announcing this player's coming to us next year. It's not just an Arsenal thing, but it's easy to put the Arsenal blinkers on. But we also know that there, for better or for worse, there's a section of the fan base that really gets agitated, that jumps at rumors, that lives on the adrenaline button being pushed all the time. So, given this, that, at the last minute, he's going to be snatched away from Arsenal after hearing so long that he's coming. Where do you rate this rumor?
First of all, I do want to just sort of say I'm a little bit surprised that Ryan only going to an 8 on that. I understand why he has. Obviously, he just wants to, keep that little bit of space clear just in case. But I think we've all kind of, looked at everything that's gone on. I mean, over Twitter, I've been kind of detailing it from sort of around, I think, April 22nd, April 23rd up until now. Sam wrote a very detailed article on the story so far, detailing exactly sort of what's happened as well. And as he said, this has been going on for quite some time now. And as Ryan's pointed out as well, he's not just going to turn around and suddenly say, no, I'm going somewhere else. Look at the last person that almost went to Napoli, Nicola Pepe, where he ended up. As Sam said, look at Lucas Torreira, Leno, one person he missed, which suddenly just shipped up with Napoli just before we signed him with Kieran Tierney. So that's 4 players so far that press have said Napoli are going to take, and we've ended up having them. It's the same as as I said, Ardis Milik has now apparently agreed with Juventus. I don't think there was ever anything in that. Atletico have still got to pay 50 million euros or whatever it is to Chelsea for Morata, for the permanent move of Alvaro Morata. They're looking to shift on Costa, whether or not they would have played those 2 up top. But for me, it's pretty simple. I mean, everywhere. For me, this kind of feels like the Lucas Torreira situation, where papers were coming out and saying, this club could get him and that club could get him. Whereas at that time, I mean, I was saying on Twitter day in, day out, he's already with us when the World Cup was going on. He's already about to join us. It kind of feels like that. For me, this is definitely a 10 on Sam's scale. I can't see any reason it would be any lower. The most recent report came out of Mundo Deportivo. Don't know if it's questionable or not, but the report is very, very similar to other reports that have come out. We're about to triple his wages. He's ready to say yes to us. I mean, if this is him trying to get a bigger play at Atletico, he would have signed the contract that's been sitting there for what is it now? 9 months, 8-9 months. Which itself was doubling his wages plus had appearance fees. There's no way that Atletico can cover the triple. There's no way that Napoli can cover the triple. Right now, during COVID, as I said the other week, I feel these kind of things are playing into our hands. I don't see any club currently that's going to be able to match that needs a player of Partey's profile either. So yeah, I definitely see it being top rung, 10.
Okay. Let's go a little quicker on this one, because the Aubameyang counter offer or his terms really seems to kind of undercut this one. So maybe not spend so much time explaining your rationale, but just go with the number. I'm going to start with Dean. I'll work it the opposite way. A rumor came out, I believe it was yesterday, that would have sent Matteo Guendouzi and Pierre Aubameyang to Barcelona for Antoine Griezmann. Rate that one. We'll start with you, Dean.
-10.
Okay. Do you really need to expand on that?
No, I just think it's nonsense.
Okay, Ryan, any smoke to that, or is this just Twitter chatter?
I just don't believe it at all. I think it's a 0. It's not going to happen.
All right, Sam, and on the Sam scale, where do you put that one?
I'm going to say 3. Reason for all that being is there's interest in Lacazette and Guendouzi, but do I see it happening? No.
All right. So, Ryan, I'm going to turn to you. Let's finish this segment. You've made a very interesting point offline, talking about the names. And we kicked this about it in discussing another topic, which is that for a club that apparently has very little money, Arsenal has been connected with a ridiculous number of players this spring and this early summer. You were saying before we came on air that, that it seems like the target list starts this wide, and then as we get a little farther, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And now we're to the point where the real obvious targets are evident if you're really willing to look. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, it seems to me that we're linked with quite a few players, a hell of a lot of players, if I'm being honest. And then as soon as we come closer to the start of the window, like the names start getting the same name every single day. And we had Kurzawa renewed at PSG. Koku renewed at Feyenoord. We had, who else was there? There's someone else, I can't remember the name, but he's definitely not signing. Kluivert, he's not signing now. So the names are getting shorter as the window's getting closer. So as Sam's mentioned previously, Arsenal have a profile. They have a name. They name their profile with their names, and then it suddenly gets smaller every single week. And I think that's just very interesting to see in the next couple of weeks of who's going to be signing for us.
All right, and on that, let's go back to the games at hand. All right, Arsenal have gotten through the quote-unquote the easier segment. It did turn out it wasn't so easy. They had City, but then they had 3 matches against teams below them in the table. Brighton, Norwich, Southampton. And now they're about to start a 4-game stretch. It's really going to determine where they land eventually in the table. It starts tomorrow against Wolves at the Molineux. Looking at the 4, because we've got Liverpool in there, Leicester, Spurs, and Wolves. We were talking about this. I'm going to start with you, Sam. This might be the hardest match, the first one.
Yeah. As I spoke today, saying Nuno's created a perfect environment for the Wolves players to flourish in, which I have to agree with. They've really bought into his philosophy. They play good, free-flowing attacking football, but also on the flip side of that, they're quite solid defensively. Then you've got players like Jimenez. He can score when he's on it. He's sometimes unplayable. You've got Adama Traore. I don't need to say much about that guy. Just look at him. The way that he goes down the wings, he's like a tank. And he has come on leaps and bounds since his Villa days. Then Jota, then also Neves. You can also put in there Dendonka. They've got a very good blend of players. So I feel for the game, Mikel needs to have something up his sleeve to nullify their threats, because they have got quite a few threats. But I think that we can deal with them. If I was a betting man, I'd probably say a 2-1 victory. But yeah, I'd probably go 2-1. But yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
All right, Ryan, in the same press conference where he complimented Wolves so thoroughly, he talked about their attack, but he also talked about their defense and how disciplined they are and how they make it very, very difficult for opponents to find space, to find opportunities, especially off their ground. He said he had some ideas. What might those ideas be? What could we look for? How is Arsenal going to try to find goals?
Well, I think because they play 5 at the back, and then they play 2 across the midfield, and then 3 up front. They play a 5-2-3. I think we're going to need to pack the midfield. I think we're going to need energy. We're going to need to control the tempo. And if we're to beat them, I think we're going to have to play 2 up front as well, because they're good. Having wingers against them is just null and void, because they will have no space, because they have the wing backs, the right and left centre back. They're going to come out wide, and then they have the either winger, Adama or Jota, who track back as well. So it's pretty much a 3 against 2 in the wide positions. So unless we go like for like with a 5 at the back, as we have been recently, we're going to need to. If Arteta has something to surprise them, we're going to have to go with 3 in midfield, I believe, and have like a Willock, Ceballos and Xhaka in midfield, or even Torreira if he's ready to play. And I think we're going to have to play Aubameyang and a striker next to him, because otherwise we're just going to get overrun.
All right, Dean, again, this has not been a good ground for Arsenal in recent times. Do you look for any significant changes in lineup? I'll come back to Ryan in a moment, but give us your thoughts on how to approach this, and then give us your prediction.
I think Ryan has pretty much kind of nailed it on the head with the packing the midfield. That's definitely something we've got to look at doing. I say, as he proposed it, probably very similar. We'd maybe have a 5-3-2. I don't know. Definitely bring Torreira in for tomorrow, I think. I just don't see it happening, but I'd like to see Ozil, although at the same time I think we need someone that's a bit more, a bit less fluid and a bit more tough strength-wise. A bit more of a bully up there. I just don't know who would do that. I don't want to see Ceballos on the pitch tomorrow, as well as he's kind of been doing the odd times. I don't think we can be messing around in the middle of the park, which obviously I know that's not his aim, but he always seems to be sort of stopping and looking around him with the ball. So I don't want to see that. So maybe start like Xhaka, Torreira. I don't know who else I'd put with them, I'll be honest. I'm not sure who I'd have in that midfield with them. Maybe Willock, not for strength, but for speed. Maybe a bit of guile. Definitely having something like Aubameyang, and maybe even a target man, so maybe Aubameyang and Lacazette together up top. Defence-wise, I feel the same five at the back that we've been having. Maybe Cedric as the right wing back. Tierney, obviously. Then maybe Socrates, Mustafi, and Holding. If Mustafi, was he injured again in the last game? I'm not too sure. But if he's available, maybe those five at the back. Prediction-wise, I've said before that either this or Leicester, and that's before I kind of really paid attention to Leicester's kind of spiral at the moment, were going to be the draws. So I think this one's going to be a draw, maybe 2-2.
All right, and Ryan, have you laid it out tactically? You didn't give us a prediction. Just coming back to you, can Arsenal get some points here? Again, they've had real trouble getting points out of the Molineux in recent matches.
I think it's going to be a very tough game. I think it's going to be a 1-1. I want to say it's going to be a 2-1 to Arsenal, but I think they're just too defensively good to concede more than once against us.
Yeah, that was a scoreline I had in mind. I'm going to stay with 1-1 as well. Again, I think the key for this match, as much as we don't like it, is not to concede 3 points. They've got matches that look hard on paper coming up, but suddenly, as we were saying, Leicester, Spurs, and the Liverpool match suddenly don't look quite so hard. So I guess, keep momentum is where I would say. That's my 2 cents on this. Don't lose it, especially after winning 3 in a row and building up some confidence and building up. But again, who knows? Maybe that cohesion that we saw against Norwich comes through, and Sam is right, and they can steal all 3 points. And I think we'd all be very happy to see talk about the 4th. Anything? I'm just going to throw this one open before we wrap up. Anything that you see coming? I'll just take you individually. Sam, surprise signings. Any surprises? Any obvious? What are you looking for off the pitch or on the pitch by the time we come back on Tuesday?
Sorry, just to jump back quickly into the last question. I think if we play a 4-2-2-2, that's the formation that we beat Leicester. Not Leicester, Wolves. But moving forward, I firmly believe that we will get some more news around Thomas Partey and potentially some news on Upamecano, because if I remember correctly, I believe that the Bundesliga is either over now or finishing this weekend. So with that being said, I think there's going to be a lot more coming from Germany in regards to transfer news.
All right, Ryan, what are you looking for, either on the pitch or off the pitch?
Looking for 3 points tomorrow, and I'm looking for an Aubameyang signature.
Okay, those are 2 things to hope for, certainly. Dean, you get the final word this week. What's going to be in the box when Arsenal fans open them up over the next few days?
Well, I said a 2-2 draw, but I'd like to see a win tomorrow, obviously. I'd like to see us staying above that lot. A little bit more on Thomas and some potential other ins. And, or Aubameyang. Aubameyang staying. So, yeah.
All right. Arsenal crept up from 9th to 8th. I'm going to hope for a win and another step up, maybe up to 7th, hopping Sheffield United. All right. And on that, we wrap up this episode of Saved by the Bellerin. We thank all of you out in the internet world for joining us here on Sports Talkline, wherever you catch us, whether it's on YouTube, whether you just listen to the pod directly on the other channels. But again, subscribe to the Saved by the Bellerin, to our webpage, see us or read us on the webpage, subscribe to our Twitter feed, subscribe to our YouTube feed, and just keep coming back. We enjoy having you. We enjoy talking Arsenal football with you. And so with that, for Raphael, for Sam, for Ryan, and for Dean, good night, everybody.
Saved by the Bellerin is a sports talkline production. This pod features work by Dean, Raphael, Ryan, Sammy, Marissa, and Freddie. Music is provided by Purple Planet Music, which can be found online at www.purple-planet.com. Thank you for listening.